Hey guys, and welcome back to the Wrestling Hideout Podcast. I am your host Rhys, alongside Liam.
Hi everybody.
Now, it was your turn to pick a topic this week. What are we chatting about?
Chick Magnet Brooks.
Chick Magnet Brooks. Now, give some preface. Are we covering his whole career? Are we covering one company? What is the plan for this episode?
The plan for this episode is a little bit of information about his career, a little bit about how much money he was paid, more to do with how he exited World Wrestling Entertainment and the problems he's had with AEW. So we're talking late WWE career, AEW career.
Okay. Well, what was your first introduction to Punk? Did you know him before WWE, or was that your first?
My first interaction with him was Survivor Series with DX, I believe it was.
DX and the Hardys, where they won like 5-0 or something.
Yes, against.
Yes.
I think it was Orton's team.
Yeah, I think it was like Orton, Edge, Big Show.
Another pay-per-view, another Big Show burial.
Yep. Yeah, I
Yes,
didn't know him from Impact. I say Impact from early TNA or from Ring of Honor. I had no idea about him.
To be honest, back then I didn't really know too much about the other industries. I knew a little bit about Impact. I never watched Ring of Honor until recently, if I'm honest with you. Never watched it. I don't think it was easy to watch in the UK in the early 2000s.
No, the only RH show I've ever watched was a 2008, maybe 2010. It was around then, and it was Tyler Black, aka Seth Rollins, in the main event as the champ, and I had to buy that DVD from eBay, and that's my only Ring of Honor show I've watched.
Which is a shame, if I'm honest with you, Reese, because early Ring of Honor, Jim Cornette simp here, early Ring of Honor with Jim Cornette in charge of booking actually was really, really good.
Mm-hmm.
Again, you had people like Samoa Joe come through. Samoa Joe and CM Punk had a trio of or a quadrilogy of amazing matches, and Ring of Honor produced quite a few stars that would go on later to be Impact and WWE stars.
Yeah, I mean, RH was just pillaged by them. Absolutely pillaged.
At one point, it was snipping on Impact's or TNA, on TNA's ankles to be the second biggest show in wrestling in the world.
It was Death Before Dishonor 8. June 19th, 2010. That is the DVD I owned.
Ah, okay. Tyler Breeze, yeah, early Seth Rollins.
Yeah, share my age with that one.
I'm showing your age, Jesus Christ. So, I mean, I remember that Survivor Series match because it's been publicly spoken about how the idea wasn't for CM Punk to be so abjectly over with the crowd. He was put into the match as a sub, from what I know. I might be wrong, people can correct me. And the crowd just were chanting him to the point where Triple H put his arm around his arm around CM Punk and, bigged him up, acknowledging how the crowd was into him. And I'll never forget that he used to do this thing with his hands, where he used to clasp his hands together and, roll his wrists together. That was one of his early things. Yep. I used to do that all the time after watching that.
Yeah, no, that's one thing that sounds like my head. I don't know if it's more because of his performance or just from how weird that match was. But I know exactly the Survivor Series match you're talking about. Because the following month was the infamous December to Dismember pay-per-view.
One of the worst pay-per-views I've ever seen.
Have you heard the story about this pay-per-view?
It was meant to beat Chris Benoit for the title. Is that the right one?
No, I think that was a normal ECW show. Okay. This was the show where Paul Heyman had wrote for CM Punk to eliminate every single person in the Elimination Chamber.
Okay.
And then Vince McMahon hated that idea so much, he tore up the show, rewrote the entire thing, had Bobby Lashley win the ECW championship, and Heyman lost his booker job of ECW.
Yes. Yes, I remember this. This is when Heyman lost control of ECW.
And this is one of the worst rated pay-per-views
It
in
killed the
history.
brand. It turned the brand because at first ECW for the first couple of months, first 6 months, was pretty good. I mean, I even liked Kurt Angle going over there because Kurt Angle
Oh,
was extreme, and I think at
he
that
was the
time,
perfect fit for it.
Kurt Angle was on more drugs than a pharmacy.
Yep.
But yeah, I was looking up some of his stats. He signed on quite a high salary for a newbie in WWE. Signed on 200K a year, which is quite high for a new wrestler that isn't, let's say, well known in the world.
Yep.
And then he went up to 300 grand when he started to be on the main roster. He was only being paid 300 grand a year when he won the world title off Jeff Hardy, if you remember that. I do. Do you know what? I never understood the crowd reaction to that, and I've never understood why Jeff Hardy is so over with the fans. Yes, he's a good wrestler, but like my point of view, I think that probably really pissed off someone like CM Punk, and probably actually hurt him in the long run with WWE. He was so big with the crowd, and then like someone who's straight edge, someone who's never had a drink in his life. Or is it because, in your opinion, that fans could relate to Jeff Hardy?
Jeff Hardy's always going to be a wrestling hero. I mean, look at his personal life. The guy unfortunately has a bunch of demons, has had so many DUIs, but he's just so welcomed every time you see him back on TV. I think the fact he's given so much to wrestling,
Fair enough.
I think is a testament to it's just a testament to how loved he is.
Some people love him, some people hate him. I don't hate him. I just
Yeah,
never understood why the crowd was so bummed that day.
I'm a huge Jeff Hardy fan, and I think he is someone you never expected to win a world championship. So I think seeing him win it is one of those things where you could have had anyone beat him. I think it would have been a negative reaction.
How many
because
titles did he get in the end, Jeff Hardy?
I think it was only 2.
3. I'm
Maybe
thinking 3. I'm thinking he won the WWE title once and the World Heavyweight Championship twice.
He won. He won it against Triple H and Edge at Armageddon, and I believe he lost it the next month to Orton. And then he definitely won it again. Other than that, I have no idea.
I know he had that awful belt in Impact, that flipping immortal belt.
The immortal one, yeah. Well, touched on the December to Dismember. So Punk went from eliminating everyone. Did you know he's the first person eliminated in that match?
I can imagine that is the sort of thing Vince McMahon would do to upset somebody. I remember.
Did you know who the last 3 people in that match were?
They were all WWE guys, Raw guys, whatever.
Test, Big Show, and Bobby Lashley.
Oh. Big Show.
The most extreme.
I could have seen the Giant, if you follow me, the Giant and the Big Show in ECW. Like, Test is an interesting person who I'd like to have a long conversation about in the future. I don't rate Bobby.
I used to love.
I don't rate Bobby Lashley. I don't.
Nope.
I don't rate him
Me
at
neither.
all.
I've never enjoyed his.
Never did. He's definitely better since he came back from his long hiatus. That's probably because they've paired him up with MVP, and that is it. Leo Rush.
Yeah. It was Leo Rush. Yeah, he's now
Leo Rush and MVP
in Impact.
to stop him talking.
Yeah.
But yeah, December to Dismember is a pay-per-view I will never rewatch. The idea of an extreme elimination chamber could have been great.
Yeah, could have been. But then it's basically Lethal Lockdown in TNA, just a little different.
True.
Just to go back to our point, Jeff Hardy won 1 WWE Championship and he won 2 World Heavyweight Championships. So 3
and he's
total.
won 3 in Impact, I believe, as well.
I can tell you, he has 3 Impact. He has 5 Intercontinental, 1 European, 1 United States, 3 Hardcore, 1 Light Heavyweight, 8 Combined Tag Team Championships.
I just on that point, I'm surprised they never brought back the European title, considering how much they tried to push into Europe now.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm kind of surprised I didn't come back with NXT UK. That would have been the perfect
True.
jumping on point.
So,
But
going more to CM Punk, do you remember his first Hell in a Cell match with The Undertaker?
no.
So CM Punk lost his title to The Undertaker in a Hell in a Cell. Absolutely amazing.
Did he now?
Amazing match. He
I wasn't really watching wrestling at this point.
okay. So I'll lead on that then. So he had a whole promo with the Undertaker in Hell in a Cell. It was around the time when the Undertaker was using the triangle choke, Gates of Hell, I think he called it.
Yes. Everyone was bleeding from the mouth.
Yeah,
from it.
yeah. It was one of those times. Skipping along more with CM Punk to a time that you probably recognise. So I'll skip forward a couple of years. The New Nexus. You remember that?
Unfortunately.
So, the New Nexus versus The Core. The Core is actually voted the worst ever wrestling stable in WWE history.
I honestly can't say I'm surprised. It was rough.
Surely you. I
The
was going
only
to say actually, I know you edit this. If you skip back, Straight Edge Society. Do you remember that? That's when he started to get
yes,
noticed.
yes, I remember the Stretch Society.
With Luke Gallows and Serena, who actually got fired and sued Vince, I believe.
Yeah, she got fired for being caught drinking alcohol in a bar or something.
Yep, she's actually now signed with AEW as well.
Yep, Serena D, one of the best female wrestlers probably alive today.
Yep, former NWA World Title, former TNA.
Yep.
Is she?
And of course, Luke Gallows.
Yeah, Luke Gallows. Was Luke Gallows in Aces and Eights?
He was the big heavy.
Bullet Club.
And then he went over to New Japan. Yeah, then he went over to New Japan with Bullet Club, formed the tag team with Carl Anderson.
And you're missing one more member of the Straight Edge Society who was not really remembered for being in it, but Joey Mercury was in it.
Yeah.
Joey Mercury, of course,
I remember.
who CM Punk actually wrestled in Ring of Honor at one point.
Yeah, he's got a big history. He was in ECW in like the final year or so.
He's not the one that had his nose exploded, is he?
By the man we were just talking about, Jeff Hardy. Yep.
No. Joe. Oh yeah, was it Joe? Because it was Eminem, wasn't it? And one of them,
Yeah.
in his career in WWE, never really recovered after that. It was John Morrison and Joey Mercury, wasn't it? Yeah. I remember seeing that live. Actually, his nose just.
Me too, and it was awful. Yeah.
But yeah. So the Straight Edge Society, was actually a really, really good stable, trying to kind of build on the right to censor.
Yes. Yeah. What a stable that was.
And it all started over the feud with CM Punk and Jeff Hardy. The Straight Edge Society was built on that because of CM Punk's allusions to Hardy's real life drug issues.
All
yeah. Right. So Punk retained his world title in a loser leaves SmackDown, I believe it was. So no, loser leaves WWE steel cage match.
Okay.
And so after that, that's when Jeff Hardy actually took his hiatus from WWE. It was one of the times where he was actually forced out of the company. He was made to leave. The idea was that he was going to win the title. He had his 700th DUI, and Vince had enough. And that's 2009.
Is this when Impact picked him back up?
That's 2009, when he then 3 minutes later was sitting on top of the steel cage in Impact, if you remember.
Yes.
Same
yes.
night, apparently.
Oh, really? Damn. Good old Jeff Hardy.
But moving on, because our episodes have to be a bit shorter now.
Just for now.
So you then had the New Nexus, which is just a crock of shit, so we'll move on from that.
The only thing I remember about the New Nexus was the skit backstage where Punk had a pool cue stick, I think it was, and he snapped it in half and gave two of the wrestlers half each and told them they had to fight to the death to be in the new Nexus. That's the only thing I remember.
Well, technically
Other than that, I think I wiped it all out of my memory.
Technically speaking, he was still wearing New Nexus colours when he beat John Cena for the world title that night.
This is true.
So the main reason I wanted to talk about this was the whole abortive summer of Punk. So, what is your memories of this whole incident?
I had pretty much dipped out of watching all wrestling at this point. My only interaction with wrestling would be like checking WWE.com to see the results. I wasn't watching pay-per-views. I wasn't watching weekly shows. I wasn't even watching YouTube highlights. I wasn't watching TNA, which you know how much I love TNA. I was out completely. And then I remember something blew up. I think it might have been Twitter if Twitter was around back then. But I remember somehow I heard about this pipe bomb. And that was what kickstarted me back into watching. Because like, oh, what's this about? And I remember just sitting there watching the pipe bomb, him sat on the stage, and just being like, what is happening? Because
Vince McMahon is a millionaire who should be a billionaire, but he surrounds himself with butt-sniffing douches or something, wasn't it?
Yeah, the Hello Colt Cabana, all sorts.
Going off on about John Laryngitis having his mic cut. That's when they brought John Laurinaitis off the out the back, out the front. I actually think for his role, he actually played it perfectly. John Laurinaitis, he played the dickhead manager role perfectly on TV, and he so reminds me of my ex-area manager in a company I won't name. I used to think they were the same person at one point. Because they used to have the same gravelly voice and they used to wear the same suits.
Nice.
Oh, dear.
Love that.
The whole summer of... So, that is John Cena's only 5-star match from Uncle Meltzer.
Yeah. Now, I have a controversial take.
What's that?
At the time, I thought that match was amazing. I went back and watched it a couple of weeks ago. I've seen a lot better matches recently.
Again, it's one of those matches where if there wasn't such a crowd involvement, it wouldn't be so big. Remember we had this conversation about Rock Hogan. Now, it's a better match than Rock Hogan.
Oh, yeah.
That match is all about the crowd reaction and all about how it ended.
Yep. I think now that you know the ending, I don't think the match holds up.
But
it's
that
a good
ending
match.
was incredible to watch at the time. You had Punk beat Cena because Cena wouldn't allow Vince to get involved. Then he manages to kick Alberto Del Rio in the head, and I think the big thing that people always want when I think of CM Punk, the first image that comes to my mind is him blowing a kiss at Vince on the rail.
Yep.
With
that's such an iconic moment.
With that fan, cheering in the picture, right next to him. I think they played that so well because people actually thought. It's one of those things for me. It was one of the last real kayfabe moments in wrestling for me. I actually thought genuinely in my heart that he was leaving.
Me too. Didn't he sign the contract
he signed the contract on the night?
Started
5 minutes before the match. John Laurinaitis got the paperwork out and signed it. His money went up from 1 million to 1.7 overnight. Quite a big pay increase.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say no to that.
I wouldn't say no to the 0.7 at this moment in time, or the 0.7.
Yeah.
A lot of the build up to that match was apparently real. With his trouble with re-signing, because he actually thought that he was worth a lot more than they were giving him, and it was actually Vince wanted to give him what he wanted. It was Hunter and John Laurinaitis that were holding it back, because truthfully, I think this has been publicly acknowledged, Triple H never saw what people got about CM Punk, did he?
Right, yeah.
I mean, if you move on to later on, when he came back and, why was Triple H booking himself to beat CM Punk during what was supposed to be the summer of Punk, when he was the hottest person in WWE? He was outselling anybody. His merch sales were up with Stone Cold's at that point in time, and then he got beaten by a part-timer in his mid-50s.
Well, it's like a lot of people say online, like WWE do not like organic, like stars. They like people that they have chosen and built up. Look how long it took Daniel Bryan to become a big thing. The fans were cheering for him, and he was lumbered in with the Wyatt family.
Do you think it was? I think the whole thing with Daniel Bryan was going on round about the same time, wasn't it? Wasn't long after. It wasn't. It was the same era, wasn't it? Like that same 2-year period. Do you think they couldn't cope backstage with two of them? It was. I'm looking at it now. The summer of Punk was the year that the year before Daniel Bryan got huge at WrestleMania. They were both world champion at one time at the same time. Because if you remember, you had Punk, Zack Ryder, and Daniel Bryan all come down to the ring at one point and do a promo.
Yeah. I do remember.
So, have you done any have you looked at anything to do with how he left the company? Do you know much about that?
I know bits and pieces. Again, this was during a period where I wasn't really keeping up with wrestling. I know about like all his the staph infection issue in his arm and stuff. Was it his arm?
Neck.
His neck. That was it. It was Moxley that had one in his arm. That was it. So
he actually could have died. Genuinely, they found in court that he could have died if he'd have carried on wrestling.
Oh wow!
Because it was a staph inspection on his neck, and they were just giving him Somos and painkillers and just telling him to go out there. But I've cut forward a little bit of time just to explain with CM Punk to our newer fans. CM Punk held the WWE title for 443 days. And he at the time was the longest oh god, sorry, I'm stuttering. At the time, he was the longest reigning champion of the decade for over 10 years. Obviously, they had Lesnar beat it, and then obviously now we're during the Roman Empire. But at that time, he was the longest held champion. But how many pay-per-views did he headline?
I'm going to guess 4.
Exactly. 4 pay-per-views.
Oh.
Yeah, 4 pay-per-views in a year and 3 months.
Yeah, that's
and this is what upset him.
It looks scary.
He didn't headline WrestleMania even when he was world champion. He didn't headline SummerSlam.
Yeah, I know about the non-WrestleMania. Surely Punk versus Undertaker should be a WrestleMania match.
It was the match of the night, but it wasn't the main event. And this was one of the things that Punk got upset about, because most of the Undertaker's matches pre and before were actually counted as the main event. He didn't go out last.
The problem is, you know what? That same WrestleMania was Rock Cena, which
that upset him a lot because it was supposed to be Punk Rock at WrestleMania.
Because they did Punk Rock at
They did it at Rumble,
right?
And then
Rock beat
him for the title, and then he beat him at No Way Out. I think it was No Way Out, and then he went on a losing run to part-timers over the next 6 pay-per-views.
Right.
He lost to Rock. He lost in 2 pay-per-views. He then lost to The Undertaker. He then lost to Lesnar a couple of times as well. He had a brilliant match with Lesnar at SummerSlam, but again he lost. And this is when he started to get really upset, because he was fighting injured. He was supposed to be the company's biggest star, and he was being put out to slaughter to the part-timers. And there was a couple of backstage segments that he did during this time, which have been acknowledged to have been totally off script. One of which is when he apparently turned around to the camera and said, "Oh, that's okay, I'll lose to Lesnar, but who's going to be here on Monday? Who's going to be here next Monday?"
Did this lead into the Punk versus Ryback feud?
It did. It did
This I do know
where
about.
Punk got actually legitimately injured by Ryback.
Yes.
Ryback is an interesting character. His Twitter is a bit weird, or his X.
Don't say that, he'll come after us.
X is a bit weird. Obviously, you know about the 2 times Rhys where he put up a poll on Twitter, and both times people told him to stay retired, which was hilarious. It was like 61% the first time and 70% the second time told him to stay retired. He got really
I do know
got really upset on his Twitter. Or we can't call it Twitter anymore, can we? It's his X.
Yeah, his X.
His X. And his last ever match was at the Royal Rumble, where they had Kane actually manhandle him. Did you see this?
I did not.
So during the Royal Rumble match, WWE sent out Kane to basically beat the shit out of him, and then he no-showed Raw, and then he got sacked.
He said he was going home or something.
Actually, he turned up and then left before production started. Just walked back out, and then nobody saw him for what in wrestling anyway. 7 years was it?
Something like that.
Of course, he made $1 million.
That would have been what,
he made $1 million getting his ass handed to him in a minute and a half in M&A. But honestly, if I knew I wasn't going to get killed, I'd probably do the same thing.
Yeah, no, exactly. And you know what? Credit for him for doing it.
People take the piss out of him, but he gave it a go. Not everybody can be like Brock Lesnar, but again, Brock Lesnar's MMA, if you actually watch it, isn't great.
No, he's just he hits hard, and he used to be an amateur amateur wrestler.
He hits hard, and most of the people he fought were already on the way out. When he went up against Nate Diaz killed him in the ring.
It's Frank Mir, good old Frank Mir, UFC legend. But yeah, he was definitely on his decline when Punk came in.
Did you on that? I know we're going off subject a little bit. Did you hear about Lesnar and his injury because of MMA? He lost half of his intestines or something.
Yes, Lesnar is an interesting topic because for as much as you shit on the guy, he's had a lot of injuries and illnesses that would plague a lot of people. You've got that. You've got his, was it dolichitis, or how do you say it? The lung,
something like that.
The lung issues. We might shit on him for not wrestling that often, or for coming in, squashing people and leaving and making a load of money, but to still be going out there and doing what he's doing after all this, it's something.
You can shit on him, but if he can get paid 10 million quid to turn up for 3 matches,
right? And the guy's in better physical shape than I am.
A year. Recently, look. Oh, he's definitely with me and all my problems I've got now. But if you look at him, he looks happy now.
Yeah.
He didn't look happy for quite a long time. It might be because his daughter's a clone, but
Yeah.
Have you seen a picture of his daughter?
I have. It's scary. They are.
It's
so similar.
It's definitely not. Definitely doesn't look like her mum.
No, not at all.
So obviously, Punk came back to do this thing with Fox.
Yep.
That didn't last long, did it? That whole program.
No.
And at that point in time, people actually thought he was going to re-sign, but he never signed for WWE. He signed for Fox.
Yep.
He never worked for WWE. He was just allowed to appear on a program with WWE. Interesting fact: all of the people that were on that show or panelists on that show now work for AEW or Impact.
Wasn't Booker T on that show?
It was Renee. It was Ciara. It was Christian Cage, I believe.
Yes.
I can't even remember what it was called. Was it WWE Backstage?
I never watched it.
Let's have a look. WWE Backstage 2019. Okay, so Booker T. Okay, I'll take that back. So Renee Young was the host. So yeah, you got Christian, Page, CM Punk, Mark Henry. Renee, they all work for AEW or to Impact now.
I know
Booker T doesn't.
Booker T does commentary for NXT, but he's not main show.
They got Ember Moon used to be on that. She now works for AEW.
ROH Ladies Champion.
Yeah.
Longest reigning one in history now, as of time of recording.
Yeah, so I mean, if you look at that, it's weird how everybody, basically apart from Booker T on that show, went to work for AEW.
I mean, Booker T went to Impact. I wouldn't say it's out the realms of possibility for him to eventually leave WWE.
I don't like Booker T.
I hate his
I
commentary.
like I like it. All right, I'll rephrase that. I like his in-ring work, but I don't like his podcast and his opinions in wrestling.
I can't stand his commentary. It just bugs me.
I always thought JBL was a good commentator at what he did.
Yeah, I just hate him as well.
Yeah. I know we're going really off subject, but you remember the whole angle with Booker T and Kurt Angle and his wife, where Kurt Angle went on, "I want to have sex with your wife." It's like terrible early attitude era writing, early ruthless aggression era writing.
That is
Dear.
wrestling at its finest.
I know. So, what did you think about CM Punk? This is stuff you're going to know a lot more about. So, CM Punk's return to AEW. Really, I want your honest opinion.
I don't think it's hard to be surprised about something when it's rumored for ages and it's virtually all but confirmed, if you know what I mean. That being said, watching him come out to that Chicago crowd was amazing. Like, absolutely amazing. And I think his entire AEW run has been awesome.
Some interesting fact actually about it. I don't know if you know this, but Jeff Hardy's saying that he'd love one more match with him.
I reckon they could still go.
It's on Twitter at the moment. Jeff Hardy's, Jeff Hardy would love to work with him. Be one more promo of him. So to give you an example, they signed him on $3 million a year. It's not the highest, in AEW. I don't understand why, but John Moxley's being paid $6 million a year. I just don't get it.
I can see why people like Moxley, and it's hard to say that he isn't a top star, because he is, but he's just not my kind of wrestler.
I think wasn't he was the first to use an old TNA line. He was the first to cross the line, wasn't he?
Yeah, because he appeared on their second pay-per-view because he attacked Omega.
Jericho had already really left, hadn't he, by then?
Yeah, Jericho had gone to New Japan before that, so I wouldn't really say he crossed the line.
Jericho's on $3 million a year. CM Punk's on $3 million a year. Moxley's on $6 million a year. He must have given Tony Khan some good white powder. So when he signed, he came out and he did his whole promo, and I thought at first, to give him some credit, he had been at the ring for 7 years. His first matches weren't great, but I did like the fact they put him in a promo with Darby Allin, who was a good person to have him come back to.
I like the fact that his first few programs themselves weren't with the top stars. Like, he did the Darby one, and then he did Eddie Kingston, and then he moved on to MJF. And yes, MJF's a big star, but he wasn't squashing MJF. Like, he lost his first match against him.
I liked his stuff with Eddie Kingston. Now, I actually like Eddie Kingston.
I love Eddie Kingston.
I think he's a very late bloomer in wrestling, Eddie Kingston. I mean, he's been around, but he's a very late bloomer on the mainstream.
Yeah, he's 41.
I thought his stuff was... Do you know what? I think Eddie Kingston's the sort of person Vince Russo would have loved to have written for.
I was just about to say, Eddie Kingston is like a modern-day Steve Austin, but less like...
He's less refined, but...
Yeah, he's less on the attack and more plays into his emotions. He's that working man's champion type person.
There was some history with Eddie Kingston and Punk, wasn't there? I can't remember what it was, but part of the thing was that there was some history there.
Yeah, that was the whole thing. I also don't remember what it was at the moment. But...
I'm just having a look now. Eddie Kingston. God, he even looks a little bit like Vince Russo. He's actually he signed to AEW. He's in New Japan Pro Wrestling and Ring of Honor at the moment. Started in 2002, NWA, Chikara, AAW. So he's been around, he was in Ring of Honor. May have fought him in Ring of Honor. He had short stints in Impact as well. He's a little bit like a Kevin Owens, where John Cena said, "Welcome to the big time," and Owens was like, "I've been wrestling longer than you."
Yep.
I've been, his stuff with MJF was good. I think Punk did a lot a lot to boost MJF up to the main scene.
No, I totally agree. That feud was amazing.
Did you hear about how much how much AEW were paying MJF at this point in time?
No, but I know this
60
was
grand a year.
Yeah, because was this before he had his sabbatical and did his
It was, yeah.
work shoot promo? Yeah.
They went from paying him 60 grand a year to $1 million because of his work with Punk.
I mean,
he didn't sign a new contract. Tony Khan just did a thing where I don't know what they call it legally, but they just upped his pay. They said, we're not asking you to increase, we're just increasing your salary. MJF has gone on to probably be one of the shining points in wrestling at the moment.
Yeah, like the dude's amazing.
So obviously he then became world champion, and unfortunately his world champion reigns were very poor due to injury.
Yeah, this does seem to be a common problem for Punk. He does seem to pick up injuries quite easily.
He's only 44, and in modern wrestling, that's not old.
Yeah, that's quite young.
I reckon, if he could stay healthy, he could wrestle for another 10 years. If he could stay healthy.
He doesn't have a tough style. I reckon he'd have to remove things like the elbow drop, that sort of stuff. But
I was going to ask you this. Have you noticed his go to sleep looks different to it used to?
Yes. No, I thought it was just me. But
it doesn't go for the head anymore. It goes for the guts.
Yeah, I'm assuming he's trying to protect his knee a bit more.
And Tony Khan's got this whole list. We'll do a subject on that. This whole list. You need to listen to Jim Cornette and Brian Last on the list. It's hilarious. But yeah, but he had this whole thing with Jon Moxley, and it looks like the two of them really don't like each other.
Well, before the Mox feud, there was actually the whole Adam Page feud, which was his first world championship, I think.
Old Hangnail Page.
I think that's what led into his Mox feud, wasn't it?
It was
Hangman Page one.
And the whole thing with Adam Page. Do you remember how big that was, and how psyched the fans were that Adam Page had won the world title?
Yeah, I like Adam Page. I think he's a great wrestler. I think he works very well in AEW. I think if you put him in WWE, he would end up probably in the mid card in a proper real life cowboy gimmick.
He looks like someone that would have been with Bart Gunn in the 90s.
Yeah, I can see them squishing, but he is so good at what he does.
When he won the title against Kenny Omega, that was an amazing match.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is he was in the wrong with what he did with CM Punk. He went off script and bad-mouthed him.
Yeah, Punk strikes me as one of those people that... It strikes me that in wrestling, if you go off script, as long as... If you don't mean in a malicious way, it's fine. Punk strikes me as one of those people that doesn't like being taken off guard or people going off script unless he knows about it.
It was a very personal attack as well, wasn't it? That's what there was. It wasn't, it came across as a very personal attack. Initially, he was supposed to wrestle him, and then he had COVID, and then he couldn't wrestle him, and then he fought him at Double or Nothing, and he lost the match. And Adam Page was very upset that he lost the match because he had the whole AEW original attitude, and he didn't like the fact that Punk had come in and was already being pushed to the stars.
Yeah, isn't it Dax from FTR that said that Punk actually didn't want the world title, didn't want to be in the title chase? So, I get it. I get why Tony did it, but at the same time, this probably could have been an issue that could have been avoided.
I think it's one of those issues where Tony Khan, I think this is an ongoing thing with AEW, Tony Khan really needs a Bruce Pritchard or a JR, a young JR, to actually be a booker or a person in between him and the wrestlers. Yeah, if you look at, he just does everything, doesn't he? It's silly.
I do think he needs a not booking committee like WCW because the hassle, but I think he does need people to help him write some of the show that people with like an established history, like a Dutch Mantel, you know, like a Jim Ross, like a Jim Cornette, just people to help him like guide the ship. Because
What?
I don't think that the AEW Championship benefit from Punk having it.
No, it
I
didn't.
think,
It didn't benefit from what Tony Khan did after Punk got injured either. It
yeah,
really didn't.
I think
The
AEW
whole,
as a whole can benefit from Punk without Punk having to have the title.
it's a little bit like Shawn Michaels when he came back. He had the title once for a month as a thank you, probably, and then he must have turned down a world title shot. He was there for a decade after he came back.
Yeah, he had a few title matches, but not many.
He put them over. He put people over.
Yeah,
So Punk he beats Adam Page, and then he announces that he's injured at literally two rampages later. And instead of vacating the title, Khan as an interim champion.
I hate this thing. This is a UFC thing, and I hate it.
Then they make John Moxley the interim champion, and then Punk comes back. And then I think he loses to Moxley. Moxley becomes the world champion, and then Punk then beats Moxley, becomes the world champion, gets injured again, has the whole backstage thing with the Twinkle Toes and the Elite, and then Moxley becomes world champion again. The whole issue is so confusing.
Yeah, the first Mox match, Mox squashed him. If you remember, it took like 3 minutes, and Mox just dominated him because
Yeah,
Punk
he was
wrestled with a
really
broken
injured in
heel
that
sign.
match.
Yeah. Going to the interim thing, I hate the interim title thing. I hate it with a strong passion. Just leave the title on the injured person, or strip him of the title. Because this interim thing, it doesn't work for me. It did the same thing with Thunder Rosa and Tony Storm.
Yes.
And then after 6 months of interim female women's champion, they stripped Thunder Rosa of it anyway. Like, I don't understand this point of an interim title. I don't get it. It irks me because the UFC does it all the time.
I don't
And all
think
it means,
WWE or WWF ever did an interim world champion ever.
me neither. They just basically strip their favorites of the title, or leave the title on someone injured and just have them cutting promos for 3 months.
So yeah, so when Punk actually finally defeats Moxley for the title, it was actually a 20-minute match, and he defeats Moxley for the title, and that's the infamous All Out where it all kicked off backstage, where somebody kicked Ace Steel's dog, somebody bit somebody, everybody got suspended.
Yep.
Somehow the Elite ended up staying executive vice president. So I still don't understand to this day how they must have some contract where they can't be sacked.
Yeah, it's not a good look when your EVPs are getting into a backstage fight.
From what I can gather, I think the EVTP title has become very honorary, and I think Tony Khan doesn't let them do anything anymore.
No, apparently Omega's still very heavily involved in the women's division. But that's all I know. The Young Bucks themselves, I don't really know what they do. Because you hear things like Jericho now apparently has like an advisor role to Tony Khan and stuff.
So Jericho turned down the title of executive vice president. He's come out and said that.
I'm not surprised.
He turned that down, and he's like, he's very much like a Bruce Pritchard now in WCW. There we go. It's because I'm thinking of Bruce Pritchard in AEW. So, were you surprised that CM Punk came back after that?
Yes, I fully expected his contract to just be bought out and for him to sit at home. I think.
Do you think they tried to buy his contract out?
I don't really know how the law works in that regard. I'm assuming they couldn't force a buyout unless there was some sort of clause in it. So I'm assuming he would have to accept a payout. My only question is if they offered to buy his contract out fully, why would he come back? Why not just take the payout and sit at home?
So, I think that Tony Khan didn't want him to leave.
No, I
Tony
agree with
Khan,
that.
Tony Khan could have afforded to pay him the $6 million that he was
Well,
due to
easily.
be paid to send him home. He could have, or easily afforded to pay him the $6 million. I still think that WWE would have signed him, regardless of the back history, because Vince McMahon is all about the money, and especially at that point, they were trying to sell to Endeavour,
Yep.
and I think they would have signed him. And Jesus, the world would have come to the end in wrestling if CM Punk's music ever hits the WWE ring again.
Oh,
But
100%. Feel like when Brett came back to the WWF or WWE, I guess.
I don't know. Do you think this is worse? I don't know.
No, because
No.
I think the Bret Hart thing was a lot more public. I reckon they're
And
probably on par. I think the only thing that makes the Bret one worse is that it was so public
so
and it
in your
was so
face.
backstab. Yeah, and it was an absolute backstab.
I love that story on how he legitimately knocked Vince McMahon to his arse backstage.
Hmm.
It
So funny.
knocked him out basically, didn't he?
So funny.
Um, I think CM Punk has actually been better since he came back. I think they've booked him better, and I think his matches have been better.
Oh, his latest matches have been so. All of his Collision stuff has been amazing, in my opinion.
Collision in general. See, this is my point. Do you think Collision was made for CM Punk to keep him away
Oh,
from the Young Bucks?
yes. I think the bigger issue here is that when you go to work, if two employees are fighting, you keep them separated, right? If you're going to work and your three area managers have a fight with two of your employees, you can't keep your area managers away from the employees. It's a bad look. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, it's even worse when he is, let's say, your best performing employee that brings you the most money.
Yeah. It's a really bad look when you have to keep three managers away from one employee.
My view
I
on
think
all
it
of
boils down
this
to
is similar to Jim Cornette's view, and as well as Kevin Nash's view, that why haven't the Young Bucks been punished more publicly when they were supposed to be executives? And Kenny
yep.
Omega and the Young Bucks, through right or wrong, were supposed to be executives of the company.
I mean, the Omega thing, the things I've understood and read, it sounds like Omega wasn't too involved in the fighting. It sounds like he was just kind of there because he's the one that protected the dog or something. So yeah, it sounds like Omega himself probably wasn't there, or not wasn't there, but wasn't like a catalyst. Just the punks per se, the Bucks. But yeah, it's a weird situation because theoretically they've all got a job to do. They just need to get on and do it. But I do like the fact now that we sort of got Punk Show Collision, and then you've got the Elite Show of Dynamite, and they both feel very different.
I genuinely I agree with you utterly, Reese. I can sit through it. So far, I've managed to sit through every episode of Collision. So I've been watching Collision, you know. I can't watch the other one, Dynamite. I can't watch it.
See, I like both.
One's
I
wrestling,
am.
and one's flippy.
See, I like Lucha Libre and that sort of stuff. So I'm
Yeah, but you
more
can
inclined
like
to that.
Lucha Libre, Reese, but they miss half the moves in AEW. It's so bad.
Oh, yeah, but that's no different to like CMML and AAA. If you watch like proper Mexican Lucha Libre, like I always moan about how they wait for people to catch them, but if you watch like Mexican Lucha Libre, they just walk around the ring to get into the spot to hold the next person when they dive. So I'm sort of I can overlook that sort of stuff. I really enjoy how you got two different feels of a show in one company. Because we don't
It's
have that in
almost
WWE.
like SmackDown Raw was in the early 2000s. Very different style, very different.
Yeah, except that both shows, in my opinion, are good, whereas Raw was unwatchable and SmackDown was incredible.
Yeah, then it flipped at one point, didn't it?
Yeah. Um,
They're both
and-
unwatchable.
yeah. Honestly, I don't think Punk's had a bad AEW match. Looking at all the recent stuff, like the tag team matches with FTR against like the Bullet Club Gold and Samoa Joe have been insane. The Joe Punk match was incredible. We
Bullet
even
Club
raved about his
Gold
match.
are really good. I really
Bullet
like
Club.
Bullet Club Gold.
They are two wrestlers who I've been a fan of for
Well,
ages.
they're the Guns, aren't they?
The Guns are in the Bullet Club Gold, but it's Jay White and Juice Robinson from
Oh, okay. Yes, because the Guns have only just been added to the Bullet Club
Yeah.
Gold, haven't they?
Yeah.
Do you think CM Punk? He's got a year left of his contract. Do you think he'll resign?
Yes, because I think Tony Khan will do everything in his power to re-sign him, and I think Tony Khan should do everything in his power to re-sign him because I don't want to say fell out of love with AEW, but I sort of my interest wavered.
I
And then
honestly
Punk coming
think,
back,
yeah, because Punk
like,
brings out the best in other wrestlers like Samoa Joe and others. He's an interesting character, CM Punk, because he really has divided the wrestling world. Some people can't stand him. Some people think he's the best thing since Bret Hart.
Yep.
I think it'd be a mistake if they don't re-sign him. I don't think he's had his last world title. I think they need to keep him away from the world title for a while. I don't want him to be the person who takes it off MJF.
No, me neither.
I don't want that. I can't see him never holding it again. It'd be nice if he could win the tag titles. I'd love to see him and Danielson win the tag titles together. I'd love to see that.
I really want him to beat Orange Cassidy for is it still called the All Atlantic or is it the International now?
International. Did you hear Orange Cassidy's now a producer?
Yeah, I did.
Apparently he's really good at it. He's got a really good wrestling mind.
Yeah, loads of people online have been like, a lot of your favourite wrestlers, they got that idea from Orange Cassidy backstage.
Yep.
Like, apparently the guy's incredible. And, like, people shit on him
his
for his
wrestling's got better as well, actually, in the last year.
Yeah, people crap on him for his wrestling style, but not many people can take a comedy act and still keep it as a comedy act, but also make it super serious.
I mean, have you seen some of his matches where he genuinely does all of his moves with his hands in his pockets?
Yeah, like...
he dives off the top.
People always say you have to hold on to the top rope when you run it, otherwise you'll slip down it. And our boy's just running against it and just hoping for the best. But I would like to see him win the international title because I think that is a match you could put him do like
and
it will
give some extra prestige to the world title. To the title. How many titles does AEW have now? How many second tier titles does it have?
Should we find out?
It's got the tag titles. It's got the
trios.
I like the idea of the trios titles. I always, as a kid, thought it would have been a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
If done right, I mean, perfect for the New Day. The trio, the New Day basically were trio titles, weren't they? At one point,
yep.
I think they recognised it, didn't they, with the New Day, that all three held the titles.
Yeah, the Freebird rule, they call it.
You've got the AEW International Championship. I'll read them all. The World Championship, MJF, held for 250 days. International Championship, held by Orange Cassidy, 287 days. The TNT Championship, apparently held by Luchasaurus, according to Christian Cage, held by him for 39 days. And the Fuck the World Championship, held by Jungle Jack Perry for 7 days.
Hey, he's Hollywood Jack Perry now or something.
Whatever. I mean, he's all in the hair. Christian Cage has done an awful lot for those two. The world tag titles is now held by FTR, 112 days, and the trio titles is held under a 3-bird rule, or 4-bird rule, by the House of Black. Malachi Black, Brody King, and Buddy Matthews. Buddy Matthews, that's the name I remember.
Yeah, Buddy Matthews is in he was good old... What was his name in bloody WWE?
I can't remember, but I recognise his name. Hang on. Buddy Murphy.
That was it. He's one of my favourite wrestlers. He is so good.
He held the NXT championship. He held the NXT tag championships.
Yeah, with Wesley Blake, because that was where Electra Bliss was introduced. She was their manager.
Oh, Electra Bliss. Ugh.
Right.
My favourite female wrestler on the roster. Now, that's the conversation we need to have. And because I watched a programme on this on YouTube, a half-an-hour one, saying WWE's issue with Electra Bliss. They don't know what to do with her at the moment. She genuinely is one of the biggest names on the female roster, and they don't know what to do with her anymore.
I mean, luckily they've got some time out because she's pregnant at the moment, so
yeah, it's not
they've
mine,
got enough time to
unfortunately.
make some.
So Malachi Black, who's Dutch, married to Zelina Vega.
Yep.
He's one of the title holders. He's an interesting one. They really, really dropped the ball with him in WWE, didn't they?
Yeah, badly.
That was one of the biggest NXT drops, I think. He's had a lot of trouble with his mental health, he has, hasn't he?
Sadly, which it's a hard subject to touch on. As long as he's happy, doing what makes him happy, that's all that matters, really.
I mean, I can imagine being married to Zelina Vega helps.
Oh, 100%.
Anyway, I've kind of run out of things to talk about. We're digressing now. Ladies and gentlemen, I know that the start of that was a big, swipe through of 10 years of CM Punk in WWE, but my co-host Rhys didn't really know much about it at the time. So we concentrated on AEW.
Was a rookie.
So is there anything else
you want
to add?
No, I think we can both round this up by being like, Punk is phenomenal. He is a credit to AEW. And I think as long as they keep doing what they're doing, I think we're going to get so many more good matches and good feuds out of him.
Interesting question for you. Do you rate him as a better wrestler than someone like Samoa Joe or Daniel Bryan? Bryan Danielson?
Ooh. I'm the wrong person to ask. Because I don't like Bryan Danielson.
Okay, take your personal opinion out of it and think about what the ICW thinks. IWC.
I think probably not. I think if we were to rank him, a Punk would probably be like a 9 out of 10. Those two are like a 10 out of 10.
He's got the most marketable. He's more marketable than the other two, isn't he?
Yeah, I think what makes Punk a 10 out of 10 is the fact that he can go out there and cut a promo. And to a degree, so can Samoa Joe. Samoa Joe's promos are fierce.
He had some promos in WWE, didn't he? He had that one against Brock Lesnar where you can tell Lesnar didn't know what to say.
Mm-hmm. The one with Hardy where he's like, shut your mouth like it's an AA meeting.
Yeah. Apparently he got into some problems, didn't he, backstage with some of the wrestlers because of what he used to say.
Yeah, but I mean...
I like those that he goes,
people.
wasn't he AJ Styles? Doesn't he go up to AJ Styles and goes, "How's Wendy?" That whole thing.
Yeah.
I remember that from TNA.
Oh, he is so good. Yeah, Smojo is just...
I think Bryan Danielson, I really do get his wrestling is really good. His wrestling is really good. And he can cut a promo. Put him against CM Punk. I think he's a better wrestler. I just don't think he's a better promo. This is difficult.
No, I agree. No, I fully agree.
I think Bryan Danielson has to be careful now because his body is not right anymore.
Yeah. I would love to see Bryan Danielson do something like the G1, which is currently ongoing.
Has he not done it?
He's never done the G1.
I think one of them did it, the G1 in 8.
Kenny Omega was the first non-Japanese wrestler to ever win it. Eddie Kingston is in it at the moment.
I've got a feeling that I can't remember, somebody else in AEW did it. Hulk Hogan won it.
Hogan won the G1?
In 1983.
Oh, I think that was before it was a giant, round robin monthly long tournament.
Let's have a look. Shinsuke Nakamura's won it.
Yep.
Kenny Omega. Okada's won it a lot recently. Naito. Look at that. Yeah. Ishiburi, Nakara, Tanahashi. They're all the same names. I'm pretty sure there was... Moxley's been in it. He's been in it. Jay White's been in it.
I'm pretty sure Moxley's never done the
G1. Did Jay White win it? Oh, hang on.
I don't.
I'm looking at it. So there's also something called Tokyo Dome Challenge Rights Certificate. The Japanese wrestling gets confusing for me.
New Japan has a bunch of cups. There's also the New Japan Cup. There's the best of the Super Juniors, the Super J Cup.
Andre the Giant won it.
Tag League. Like, there's
People
loads
don't
of
realise how good Andre the Giant was in the late 70s, early 80s before he got too big and injured.
Yep.
Yeah, no, I was pretty sure that the year Kenny Omega won it, there was another American wrestler in there. In the back of my head, I swear I thought either Jericho or Cage went into it. Actually, didn't win it, but went into it.
We can double check.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, 2011. When did the MVP's been in it?
That would make sense because MVP was the first ever IWGP World Champion.
Yes, MVP had a lot of trouble getting into Japan because of his criminal record. AJ Styles has been in it.
Yep.
Who's Lance Archer? I recognise that name.
Lance Archer. He is the guy tagged up with Jake the Snake.
Benjamin's also been in it.
Yeah. Shelton Benjamin was a big name in Japan.
Davey Boy Smith Jr. has been in it. Scott Gallows has been in it. Yeah, so there has been quite a few. Evil. God, I recognise that name.
I think Evil was in Impact for a little bit.
I mean, I actually watched every episode of Impact for about 4 years, so I recognise a lot of that. I know they had Hangman Page has been in it. I know they had a brief working, didn't they, of IWGP? Because I remember the Dudleys held both titles at the same time, and I always remember thinking
every tag team title in the history of the world at one point.
I always seem to remember that the Japanese tag wrestling belts looked terrible. So, ladies and gentlemen, I know we went off topic there at the end, as we always do, but that was a brief summary of CM Punk and his time in WWE, a little bit more about CM Punk and his time in AEW. And I've been your host, Liam.
I am Rhys.
And we will speak to you in the next week. Goodbye.
Bye, guys.